If you're in a hurry, do not watch this video. It's not a video about any specific repairs. It's a compendium video of things you need to be aware of if you have specifically the 300 SEL 1990 Mercedes-Benz. These are the things that I have found that are going to need to be addressed or are going to be addressed in the course of your ownership, because a lot of these vehicles have been lacking in maintenance. If you buy it at a reasonable price, it's going to need maintenance. It's puffing some smoke, so it smells some gas, some hydrocarbons. So since I've had it, I've replaced the spark plugs, I've replaced the distributor cap, I've replaced the rotor. That helped quite a bit because the original one was all messed up. I've gone through the engine, and that's what I've discovered. Along with that is this seal right down here. I mean, there's a gasket between this front upper timing cover and the block that wears out, so it seeps oil. And you can see it's wet down there. Excuse me. So I've had to get the gasket for that, and also because you have to take the cover off the front here, I'm going to replace the cam seal that's behind the distributor here, because it attaches to the front, and the cam gear is right under here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to replace the valve cover gasket, which is right there, of course. But some of the other things I found is, for some reason, there's this juncture right here that connects the alternator wire, and the alternator is right here below this AR pump. So right down there, you can see a piece of it right there is the alternator, and this is the alternator wire that comes up through here, attaches to here, and then there's like a 10 gauge that it connects to the positive connection to the battery. This here is from my solar trickle charger that I use to keep the battery topped up. And for some reason they had a small 12 gauge wire like this connected to the 10 gauge wire here, and I was wondering why this battery. I would start it and run it, and doing experiments to it. Next thing I know, checking lights and things like that, and next thing I know, I'd turn it off and then I have a hard time starting the vehicle. And I was like, what the hell's going on with that thing? Come to find out, of course, it wasn't putting a full 14.3, 14.5 charging voltage to the battery. It was only charging like 14.2, which of course charges, but it's not enough power to the battery to really keep it topped as opposed to what is draining. So I reconnected it the proper way to the thing here. It has its own little connector to the positive terminal, you can see right here. Of course, I had to change all the fluid levels in this thing, so I had to change the oil, the filter, and I had to change the transmission filter and transmission pan gasket and transmission fluid. Had to do the power steering, which the power steering for this is right here. So I had to change the gasket in here. It has a gasket in here, so I changed the fluid there. Also discovered a big problem too with these older ones, these vacuum line fittings. A lot of these are pre-made. Of course, you can use, in my case, I use regular fuel line for the vacuum line. Of course, I bought it at the parts store to replace these fittings, because some of these are specialty fittings, but if they're loose or cracked and corroded, like some of these are wore out. And right here is another connectors for the vacuum system. Behind this fender for the 126 is where the charcoal canister is for the vacuum system, the evap system. Right now this bulb's burning, I gotta replace it. That's why it's out, but here's the other vacuum lines that go these relay valves here to switch it while it's running for the gases and so forth. I had to change all these lines out because they were dry, crack, corroded. This was the air cleaner right here, that's why that's off. But I had to replace that one because it was off. I didn't even know until I pulled the air cleaner off this thing. Now check it out, it's all wet. It's got a fuel leak at the K-Jetronics distributor, fuel distributor here. So I gotta pull that off eventually to look at that. So these are all the quirks that you're gonna have with the M103 when it's a high mileage vehicle to make repairs to make it roadworthy. I've had this thing a year and a half now, and I still don't have it on the highway. I registered it, but I still need to smog it, and I can't do that until I make these repairs. And also these electrical connectors. In this case here was all green and corroded the other day. I had to clean that, so a lot of these things happen because of age. Here's your fuel relay fuse here, your, not fuse, but fuel relay, excuse me, for this 126 that I have. Of course, I'm in here in America, so the driver's side is the left side. That's the fuel relay, that's the ECM over here. And here's the fuse box right here. There's all your fuses. This is for the turn signals and horn relay. This is for the headlights. And these other ones, I'm not too sure. They're some are fan relays for the system for the air conditioning. So that's what she looks like, M103. Oh yeah, the fuel injectors, they connect to the intake manifold, and there's a holder right there. There's a seal where the holder goes in there, and then the fuel injector has a rubber, which I recently purchased. I don't see any of them leaking because that could cause a vacuum leak, I discovered. So, and this clip has a bolt here, you have to remove it to get it off of there. So these holders hold that injector in place. And so the three parts are the fuel injector holder, which is a plastic tube. It sits in the intake with a rubber seal to seal that. And then there's a rubber holder that is like a grommet with a hole in it, and that's where the injector goes through to hold that tight without a vacuum leak for the intake. And then the holder that holds the injector in place with a hex head bolt to remove it. These are your two auxiliary fans. One is for the air conditioning when it's on to keep it low, and another one's for when the engine gets to a certain temperature and it comes on so it doesn't overheat. And then the other one, of course, as I said before, is for the air conditioning so it doesn't overheat using the air conditioner, and it keeps the coolant and the refrigerant at the operating temperature. So those are what the two fans are for. And obviously these are your two horns. Here's the fuel filter, fuel pump. On this particular 300 SEL, it's underneath the passenger side drive axles, right side. That's your differential. The plug on the side is your fill plug, and then the plug on the very bottom right there is your drain plug. So the suggestion is that you loosen the fill plug first, so that if you drain it, you know you can get the fluid back in it in case it's messed up. So the other situation is the instrument cluster. So it worked fine when I first got the vehicle, and I just changed the fuel filter and the fuel pump because they're old, and even though they worked, I was just making sure that I didn't have a fuel problem, because I'm refurbishing all the original and other parts that are either up in age or maybe a problem down the road that I don't want to have to deal with later, because when I could have changed it, when I could have changed it, is I didn't change it. So I'm being proactive, doing the maintenance to refurbish the vehicle so that it's roadworthy once I start driving it. So until recently, when I changed the fuel filter and the fuel pump, I've been having problems with my turn signal. And the turn signal would work, the horn would beep, and for some reason, for a while, the alarm system was not working, and then all of a sudden, I would open a passenger door or the trunk, and then it seems that, that the alarm would start going off, and I have to come back to the driver's door here and lock the vehicle to disconnect the alarm. And so I made a short video. The alarm system is underneath the passenger floorboard here in the corner, against here under the rug and that floor mat. There's a panel, you pull it up, you might have to remove a 10mm nut to pull a plastic panel up, and then the alarm system is right in the corner right here. You just pull the connectors. There's two connectors on there, a long connector and a short connector, and I removed it and taped them off so they don't accidentally touch, so the alarm doesn't work any longer. And shortly after that, the dash decided to stop working on me. So now the cluster gauges don't work. The idiot lights come on when I turn the key on. And the cluster gauges, my oil pressure, my fuel gauge, my water temperature, the economy works because that's off a vacuum. The speedometer, I can't really tell how it's working, but I'm assuming it don't because it's electronic. And the tachometer doesn't work now. The clock works intermittently because that's originally why I was disconnecting the battery, because after a while I noticed the car battery would be dead. And I bought it brand new. It's a good battery. I bought it from Napa. So anyhow, to remove the dash, everybody's got videos on about that, but to remove the dash, I just made this device out of a metal coat hanger. And all you do is you stick this metal tip in, you drive it, you put it in parallel to the dash, right here. Under that's pulled out now, so I don't have to do it, but you just stick it in here, and then you turn this in so that this hook can hook the inside lip of the dash here, and you tug, and the dash pulls out. So I had to pull the dash out. I pulled it apart right here, so it just pulls out, which is one nice feature. I noticed that Mercedes makes compartmentalized systems for the vehicle, which is nice. And, this car doesn't look bad. It's really in pretty good shape. Don't mind the tools right now because I'm doing various repairs, but I've got material stuff in here. But, she's in really good shape. And, I've been buying little stuff here. Like, I gotta fix that right there, the passenger handle. And I recently bought these new connectors for the visors, because there's mirrors here that have lights in them, so the lights won't work and they can't ground, and they ground through this connector right here. So I bought new connectors because they were all shot. And I keep the windscreen solar shield on here so the sun doesn't damage the dash, because the dash is in excellent shape. So Even though this car sat for a while, it was in pretty good shape when I got it. I mean, it's got, minor little things that happen because it's a high mileage car. This has, as you see right here, 234,737 miles on it. That's what I got it at. That's what it stayed at because I only haven't driven it since I've owned it, except back and forth in my back yard here where I have it stored, because I've been making repairs in between things. Because I have another car that I own that I spent money on to bring up to drivability, because I have used vehicles. So I'm a former mechanic. So this is how I afford to own things. I buy things that I think are nice, and then I repair them back to their former glory. But in this case, the dash went out. So now I'm taking the dash off, and here's the thing I'm having a problem with. And that is just that there's very few videos on YouTube. I haven't found one yet that shows you actually how to repair these. They tell you how to pull it out. You can find plenty of videos how to pull these things out. But there's no videos that say this is what you need to repair. The ones that I've seen on here, they make the assumption that you already know what you're supposed to be doing. The only one I found is only one. And they use a resistor, and you can see the damage in the circuit board that got burnt, so it has a gap, and they repaired that, and they used a resistor for the repair to have it work again. I tore this out once. I'm tearing it out again today, and I thought I'd make a video of what's going on. So if you want to own a 1990 era Mercedes-Benz, this is a 300 SCL, so it has the 6-cylinder. The badges designate the engine size. So the 300 series is the M103, or it could be the M104 series engines that are 6-cylinders. So that's what the 300 designates. The SCL stands for the cylinder class, electronic ignition, and the long wheelbase. So that's what the SCL part stands for. So you get one of these, you're going to have to do some work to them. And right now I'm working on trying to repair my own instrument cluster. So here's the gap. Once you remove here, here's the ignition, and here's the rest of the ignition back here. There's a behind all this is a piece of rubber that connects to the back. This is the ignition switch back here. You can see it. It's in two pieces, and it comes apart from the inside. So you have to get it to the back of this after you pull the connector out, and you have to be careful doing that, evidently, or you can pull the wiring out of the connector, which has the wires bundled together so that it operates the switch properly. The front part of this, and it has a can't see it, it's right here, a piece of it, the other piece of it. So it's like a big long shaft with a side shaft comes out, and it's for the steering wheel lock. The front part of this ignition switch, where the key goes in, you can turn it to accessory, and there's an alignment mark you see here that lines up with another piece on the front of this, so that you can put a rod in there. And you need to be tapering it. It's a little bit smaller. I don't have one. I'm going to make one. But it's a little bit smaller than a clothes hanger. And you have to make the end with a... Where the hell's my wire at? You're going to have to make this end on here tapered at like a 45 angle. So it's going to be like a semi-spear tip, so that it can ride over the lever, because the lever sets in the back of the ignition switch, and so it sets like this. Actually, it sets like this, and you're going to have to catch the corner like where my thumbnail is, so you can depress it, so you can turn the switch to pull it out. And the reason behind that is because once again, the component systems of the Mercedes, which I do like, is that everything's compartmentalized so that you can repair it or replace it easily in sections and not have to replace everything. So they make this so that you can pull this out, because it needs to be lubricated. This is the reason why these things get sticky or dry
And eventually what's going to happen is they won't work anymore, and you have to replace that whole tumbler for the lock mechanism. But the other part of this is that on the back here, for this ignition, this is the actual ignition switch. This whole part is called the ignition switch locking mechanism, if I remember correctly. Just to give you an idea, you can find it on Google. The other problem, like I say, I'm having is with the wiper thing right here. I have it in there. I'm not. This is not a video about all the repairs I've made and how to make it. This is a video specifically about all of the things you can expect to have happen, or you're going to need to repair with a high mileage Mercedes-Benz W126 specifically series vehicle. The W124s are comparable because all that means is that it's not the Sonder Long class of the Mercedes. It's just the standard Mercedes is what the 124 is, and the 126s are the Sonder Long class wheelbase. So that's the distinction. So I just want to take the time to show you the back of this dash cluster instrument component of the car. You saw the front when I made the video. So here's the back. So here's the central part. This here's for your speedometer. This is the connector for the speedometer. The central part of the instrument cluster. This below here is your temperature LED component that shows you the outside temperature on the car from the front. I'll turn it around in a minute and show you again. These right here are your idiot lights that are attached to the circuit board. This right side here is your gauges. This is the connector that feeds this gauge, the component. So on the front here is your fuel gauge, your oil pressure gauge, your temperature gauge, and right here is where the vacuum line goes for the economy device that tells you supposedly how well you're driving and saving gas. Which, considering the vehicle is a 3,000-pound vehicle, the mileage is 16 gallons city driving to 16 miles per gallon city driving to 24 miles per gallon highway driving. And my Toyota Camry I have gets 24 miles to the gallon in the city and 28 miles to the gallon driving the highway. And I might be able to bang it up to 30 miles per gallon. But that was what I invested in last year, rebuilding the engine and a whole bunch of stuff on that Toyota. So she's my economy car in this economy. Getting back to this instrument cluster component, this here's potentiometer, which is what dims the lights. What else am I able to show you? This here is your bulb for the panel. So it lights this up on the inside. I've had them out once already. There's a small thing there. They just twist and turn out. These are your turn signals. So these are 190s. These are the 190 series of bulbs that you would get. This for the turn signal specifically. So this is the right turn signal, and that's the left turn signal right there. Let's stick that back in. Yep. There we go. This right here is for the tachometer, I believe, and the clock is, this here is this male tang here is for the clock connection on here, and these are your other idiot lights that tell you the ABS brake system, the check engine light. I don't know which one from the back here. Specifically, it's not the point. It's just that so you know these are the other idiot lights. And one nice feature, again, of Mercedes is they pull out. It's just like, as an example for this one, you just pull it. They're just slide tubes that go on here. And I forget what that is, but that's the back. They're in 3 sections. So you got the main section, and then you got the 2 side sections. This one here is your gauges. This is your speedometer and your tripometer. This is your clock and your tachometer. And they come out with these screws right here. So there's 2 screws up top, this one and that one. And then there's 2 screws here and here. Because this one here has to come out too. That's the LED temperature, outside temperature gauge. So you just take them loose, pull that out, and there's your connectors for that. And then the central piece comes loose. And then underneath the central piece is a metal bar like this that connects this panel to and this panel from the central panel. So the problem I'm having is that it no longer makes connections. So that's what I'm trying to figure out using some testing equipment I have to see if I can figure it out myself, because once again, I'm a cheapskate. I don't want to pay somebody else to do something if I can do it myself. So that's where I'm at, and there's no videos about how to actually repair these. There's videos that show you, you know, how to look at them and how to do cosmetic stuff, change the lamps and stuff, but I don't care about that. I want mechanical knowledge, not just foo-foo knowledge. So here's the front, once again, of the instrument cluster. Of course, here's the gauges, speedometer, tripometer, tachometer, clock, and then, of course, the idiot lights down here are all the ones that, you know, some are on in the circuit board, and the other ones you just pull the lamps in and out. They're numbered, so you don't have any guesses. Like you can see here, they're numbered. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the cord, the electrical wire is numbered on the vehicle where these are inside the instrument cluster component dash hole where this unit goes. So I hope that's helpful in some way. It's not everything. And once again, there's an actual part number to help reference things. Here's this right here. Let me turn it around so I can read it. So this would be the actual component number for the instrument cluster. As far as I know, these are the Mercedes numbers. These are all Mercedes tags. And here's another Mercedes tags for this piece of the central cluster. Here's a Mercedes tag for this piece of the instrument gauges from here on the front. And then you have another one over here for this component for the tachometer clock piece of the instrument cluster. So, and then here's the front for the potentiometer to dim the lights, make them bright, make them dim, and that's this device right here. And then you have this device right here. It's just for winding the clock. So I don't know if I can do it with one hand, but see, it just moves the clock right there, which works intermittently. I don't know. I looked at it once already, and I'm taking it apart again, but I'm not going to do it on the video.